In Venezuela, the Defense Ministry announced the results of the operations of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces in response to U.S. aggressions against the country. In Argentina, the corruption scandal in the National Disability Agency continues to impact President Javier Milei's image and credibility. And in Palestine, medical sources in the Gaza Strip recorded 10 more deaths from acute malnutrition in the last 24 hours amid the tight Israeli blockade. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The Venezuelan Ministry of Defense announces the results of the operations of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces in response to U.S. aggressions against the country. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino highlighted the people's response to President Nicolás Maduro's call to arms in defense of the homeland. He also described the day as a success in the face of the media counter-revolution, which creates lies with the aim of making people believe that the country functions as a narco-state. Padrino López emphasized that the country remains firm and is working to combat any aggression.
We saw this past weekend, on Saturday and Sunday, even with the haste and the short time we had to organize ourselves to respond to that call, that the people took to the streets with their smile, with their strength, with their testimonies, because it was not simply a matter of signing a form and saying, "Here I am, with my body, with my soul, with my mind, to defend the homeland." They also took to the streets to strongly reject, as you know, dear brothers, comrades, vice ministers, also the Inspector General of the Armed Forces who are here with me today. They came out to reject with firm determination.
Venezuela's Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino López described as false the media campaign against the Venezuelan people that seeks to destabilize the country.
And there, always, the counter-revolutionary media, making it look like the opposite. Always creating, always walking in their lies, in their fake news, in their manipulations. It's absurd. It's like what the North American imperialism is trying to do to us. The people of Venezuela, trying to fabricate a lie that has very, very short legs, and impose a criminal narrative on us, and position it throughout the world, and even on the people of Venezuela, so that they will believe that this is how the state functions. The Venezuelan state does not function as a narco-state. How grotesque, how vulgar, and how far we are from such a situation. We have to say this with great humility, but it is the reality.
Several international representatives condemned the recent far-right policies of the United States against Venezuela, describing the deployment of warships and nuclear weapons in Latin America and the Caribbean as a regional threat. In this sense, the Perú Libre Party denounced the maneuver as an intrusive intervention that threatens regional sovereignty and peace. Likewise, the Honduran chapter of the International Anti-Fascist Organization warned that the deployment of a missile cruiser and a nuclear submarine near the Venezuelan coast constitutes an imperialistic provocation that violates Tlatelolco Treaty and seeks to impose fear in the region. Both organizations called on the United Nations and multilateral organizations to act urgently to stop what they consider a serious threat to the stability of Latin America and the Caribbean. Let's review what the Tlatelolco Treaty is about. It stands as one of the most pioneering peace and disarmament agreements globally signed in 1967 in Mexico City. This treaty declares all of Latin America and the Caribbean a nuclear weapons-free zone. Its fundamental objective is to guarantee regional security by strictly prohibiting the deployment, acquisition, testing, storage and possession of nuclear weapons in all countries of the region. It was decisively promoted by the Mexican ambassador and Nobel Peace Prize winner Alfonso Garcia Robles. The treaty not only strengthened peace and security in the region but also served as an inspiring model for the creation of other nuclear weapons-free zones around the world, consolidating Latin America's legacy as a continent of peace. Meanwhile, in Trinidad and Tobago, the political party Movement for Social Justice rejected on Tuesday the presence of U.S. troops in the Caribbean, qualifying it as unnecessary and provocative. The organization assured that the real objective of the United States is not to fight drug trafficking but to exert pressure on Venezuela, following its historical policy of seeking changes in the country with non-aligned governments in the region. The military deployment has generated criticisms for different Trinidadian political and social sectors, which consider it an intimidating action and a dangerous escalation. So far, the Caribbean community, CARICOM, has yet to officially pronounce on the U.S. presence in the area. And Cuba has rejected the deployment of U.S. military ships in the Caribbean Sea, warning that it threatens regional peace. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez stated the United States' dispatch of additional military ships to the Caribbean poses a significant threat to regional peace and aims to reassert its dominance over our hemisphere under the pretext of combating drug trafficking. This move is driven by the agenda of corrupt politicians such as the Secretary of State. And we stay in Venezuela, where President Nicolás Maduro received credential letters from the new ambassadors of Belarus and Cambodia. The ceremonies took place at the Miraflores Palace in Caracas, marking the beginning of new representation terms of both diplomats in the Bolivarian nation. Belarus and Cambodia are both strategic partners of Venezuela, and their new diplomats reiterated their government's commitment to continue strengthening their bilateral relations with the South American country. The Venezuelan president also received the credential letters from the new ambassadors from the Ivory Coast, the Mountaine Alassane Sea, Hungary, Daniel Skesian, and Azerbaijan, Ruslan Oglu. All three nations have traditionally held relations with the Bolivarian nation based on the principles of respect, solidarity, and brotherhood. Also, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro said that important goals have been set with countries from different continents to work together, and welcomed the support of numerous governments in the face of ongoing U.S. threats.
And on the basis of understanding, we set important goals. Venezuela here in South America, a territory of peace, and great goals with Africa, with Europe, with Asia. Venezuela is a country that is admired in the world, beloved in the world, not only by governments that are also providing with an impressive solidarity, but especially now, after Venezuela has been threatened with a nuclear submarine, that the Tlatelolco Treaty was violated, which prohibits the deployment, use, and production of nuclear weapons in Latin America. Venezuela is receiving an important international solidarity because never before had been threatened Latin American countries or Caribbean countries with a nuclear submarine. And I always say that we are blessed. God bless Venezuela and protects it, and no one will stop us. We're going to continue moving forward in all different sectors.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Corruption scandal in the National Disability Agency affects the image and credibility of the President of Argentina, Javier Milei. The latest polls reveal that 86% of Argentines consider that there is corruption in the national government and believe that the president's sister, Karina Milei, is implicated. According to the survey, only 11% of the citizens defend the government and believe that the opposition seeks to weaken Javier Milei in the electoral framework. Millions of Argentines have shown their indignation with the recently released denunciations which point to Milei's sister and right hand in government as the leader of a corruption scheme profiting from funds from the National Disability Agency. In the midst of the labor crisis in Ecuador, new surveys reveal that unemployment among young people exceeds 80%, while 1.7 million have low-paid jobs. According to the studies, millions of Ecuadorians work overtime since they receive incomes below the minimum wage. The survey showed that 54.9% of the underemployed and salaries workers are remaining 45.1% are less employed. The figure shows that both sectors are facing challenges due to the economic crisis that has hit Ecuador. Meanwhile, on Tuesday, Nicaragua made a significant advancement in terms of infrastructure by signing a loan agreement with Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development. The funding will be used to build the Prince Paul Cap Bridge, which will connect Rio Blanco and Ciuna in the northern Caribbean region of the country. The agreement was signed by the Minister of Finance and Public Credit, Bruno Gallardo, and the Minister of Transport and Infrastructure, Oscar Mojica, together with representatives of the Kuwaiti Fund, led by its interim director, General Khaled Al-Bahar. The strategic project will improve mobility, boost the local economy, and strengthen social integration within communities. The Single National Union of Construction and Similar Industry Workers of Panama, Sontrax, has begun negotiating the collective labor agreement amid the strong political persecution by the government of President José Raúl Mulino. In accordance with the provisions of the statutes and despite the extreme conditions imposed by the executive, the union is calling for the process with the Panamanian Chamber of Construction. The escalation against the country's trade union organizations, far from diminishing, is worsening, but the trade unionists ratified their determination to defend the rights of the working class, the resources and national sovereignty as well. In this context, union leader Saúl Méndez, forced to leave his country due to the relentless persecution by the government, assured that the executive branch has dedicated itself to violating the country's legal framework.
This violates the right to union representation established in Article 1066 of the Labor Code, which I have here, and in Article 68 of the Constitution, which describes how unions are organized, who organizes them, and for what purpose. It also violates the regulation of union education, established in Article 76 of the Constitution, developed in the Labor Code, and also legislated in the law that regulates the distribution of educational insurance. Naturally, it is the way in which a dictator only works together with someone who acts savagely in the Ministry of Labor to try to oppress. With all this, we continue in the resistance.
In other news, in Colombia, the commander of the military forces, Admiral Francisco Cubides, confirmed that a commission is expected to arrive to Guaviare to facilitate the release of the 34 military personnel held in the rural zone of El Retoño. The soldiers remain in the custody of a community pressured by alias Jimmy, leader of the 44th Front, after a confrontation in which 9 guerrillas were killed. Commander Cubides assured that the soldiers are in good condition with permanent communication with the command and access to fuel rations, although they are under surveillance. He denounced alias Jimmy and alias Ivan Mordisco for kidnapping, for extortion, and reiterated that the troops did not respond with weapons to avoid putting the civilian population at risk. In this regard, in a statement through his social networks, the Colombian Minister of Defense, Pedro Sanchez, demanded the immediate release of the soldiers whom he described as victims of kidnapping, and not only violates their rights but also generates serious damage and anxiety among the population.
This is a kidnapping and it is extortive. Besides, they are demanding something in exchange, forcing our military to omit with the fulfillment of their constitutional duty. We have already mobilized a great part of the special forces, and we will mobilize, if it is the case, more units. The conventional forces that are necessary. We will mobilize them to free our hostages. We can be patient in the dialogue but not tolerant with the crime, or the crime. Whoever attacks a soldier or a policeman is attacking Colombia and is attacking the social state of law. We demand, all of Colombia demands the liberation of our hostages. There is still time for them to do it voluntarily. The Ombudsman's Office and other humanitarian organizations have interceded for this liberation, but if this does not happen, be certain that we will use the whole state, always respecting human rights and international humanitarian law, to liberate our kidnapped soldiers.
A shooting took place at a school in the United States, resulting in several deaths, including children. According to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, the shooting occurred at a Catholic school in Minneapolis while students were returning to the building. Walz emphasized that the authorities are at the scene to begin their investigation and establish the facts. 3 deaths have been reported so far, including that of the attacker, who took his own life, while 20 others were injured, including 5 children. And we have a second short break coming up, but before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Palestine, medical sources in the Gaza Strip recorded 10 more deaths from acute malnutrition in the last 24 hours amid a tight Israeli aid blockade. The figure, which includes 2 children, brings the total number of hunger-related deaths in the Strip to 313, as the humanitarian crisis in the enclave worsens as the Tel Aviv regime continues to block access to food and medical supplies. In this context, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, warned that malnutrition in children under 5 doubled between March and June 2025. Moreover, international human rights organizations confirmed that the starvation rate in Gaza has reached alarming levels. Airdrops of humanitarian aid for the Gaza Strip continue amid popular rejection of this distribution method. The Palestinian authorities have denounced the restrictions imposed by Israeli forces on the entry of thousands of tons of food, resulting in an 86% shortfall in requested aid. They also warned that the humanitarian situation is deteriorating and famine is spreading. They urged the international community and Arab countries to take immediate action and pressure Israel to open the border crossings and allow urgent entry of humanitarian aid to save the lives of millions of civilians. And Israeli forces besieged the old city of Nablus in the occupied Palestinian West Bank, conducting raids and forcing families to evacuate their homes. During an operation that lasted 9 hours, dozens of military vehicles entered the neighborhoods as troops tightened the siege around the area and detained at least 1 Palestinian. The Zionist regime soldiers raided several shops and homes, forcing families to leave their residences. In addition, the army deployed snipers in locations such as the Sufayan Street area and the Martyrs Square. The incursion conducted by the Tel Aviv occupation forces is the latest of similar regular raids in the city. In Sudan, the United Nations Children's Fund denounced that the region of Al-Fashir has been under siege for 500 days, which has triggered famine in the population. In a statement, UNICEF reported that more than 260,000 civilians have been trapped in the city, sieged for more than a year without any aid. The organization specified that more than 1,000 children have died or been injured since the clashes began in the capital of North Darfur state, warning that malnutrition and cholera also threaten infants. In this context, the international body called for an end to the violence in the region and for food aid to be allowed in since humanitarian agencies have not been able to access the area. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.